session in the last year or so, but this is our third in the series that we're doing this fall. And I know many of you are repeat customers for our previous training sessions, but if you were not, we did record those sessions, and I don't know that they're really great to watch as a recording, because you can always, reach out to any one of us if you have any specific questions about your situation. But we have posted those recordings on our website at mcca.org. And if you go to the events tab, you'll be able to scroll through and find those events on there. So if you're interested in one of those, please feel free to go out and have a look at that. Session this year, we thought it would be helpful. We're a pretty small group, and Katie and Donna and I are all here to help you. And I know many of you are really subject matter experts on this as well. What we thought we would do today, instead of putting together a canned presentation that we shared with you, we wanted to go through the process of asking you what you really wanted to look at. And then we can do that as a full group, or we have the ability to break out into breakout sessions. And I don't know if you guys have used it yet, but Zoom did add the feature that you can decide which breakout session you're going to go into. So that's really cool. So if we do go into breakout sessions, we may be able to share that as well. But the other thing that we are always constantly doing at MCCA is trying out new ways to engage with people in virtual events. As you know, we've converted all of our events to virtual over the last 9 months. I think everything's going to be virtual in 2021. We're happy about a vaccine, but I still think we'll be preparing for all virtual all of next year. So, and we also know that so many of you host virtual events that sometimes you're happy to see some cool tools that are out there as well. I know I am when I attend some of your events. So the latest and greatest that we learned about is called Mentimeter. And all you need to do is go onto your web browser and follow the instructions that are at the very top of my screen that are go to menti.com and enter that 6-digit code. Sorry. Once you do that, you should see a question on your screen asking you what you are looking forward to in 2021. We have an MTN related question after this, but I wanted to use this question to make sure that we all understood how to use Mentimeter. And what this is going to do as more people participate is it's going to create a word cloud. So we can see what you're looking forward to. Aw, when he said hugging my parents, I feel the same way. Oh, good. Yep, taking trips. I'm not going to participate, but I will say I'm looking forward to a vaccine, getting a shot or two. Social interaction, that's good. So you can add up to 3 items, I believe, in Menti. So Mentimeter, while we're just having people practice to be able to add that information, it's actually a free tool, and you kind of create it just like PowerPoint presentations that then you can share on your screen like I'm doing now. So I'm sure there are ways that you can like embed it into your slide deck. We don't have a slide deck today, so but it's a way to you can do a variety of different things. You can do polls with it. You can do word clouds. There's a couple other options in there as well. So it's one of the better ones I've seen, primarily because just going to menti.com and putting in a 6-digit code is super easy. So good. Okay, so it looks like 9, 10 people have participated. And we've got 15 people on the call, so it looks like most people, the majority of folks have had a chance to at least participate. And I just love that hugs win. So looking forward to hugging people again as well. So thank you for participating in that. So before we move on, that was our little practice question. And I want to go on to the next question, which is actually why we're here today. And I want to ask you, what topics do you want to cover related to the MTN today? Again, you should be able to answer or add up to 3 things. So go ahead and let us know what topics you want to cover. Data cleanup comes up first. That almost never happens. That's a good topic though. So just go ahead and keep entering things that you might want to talk about, and then Katie and Donna and I will figure out if we want to do breakouts. You could cover reports, I think, is a topic that we can certainly cover. The other one that I know folks have an interest in is updating their institutional information and what information they're including out there, and what kind of guidance they're providing, and how they're designing that guidance and how they've been thinking about that. Another popular topic that we've covered is the reports. So if you're interested in Katie or Donna and I talking through some of the reports, we're happy to do that as well. Another one that I think some of you are probably involved in, but not everybody, is the process we're using to add or modify your participation in the MyTransfer Pathways agreements. So if you're interested in talking through some of the challenges or questions that you have about the MyTransfer Pathways agreements, that's another area that we're able to talk about as well. Another area where we would love to see more participation from colleges and universities is adding courses to this list of MTA courses, and then for our university partners to give community colleges a little bit more, or sending institutions generally a little bit more information about how the MTA is applied to your gen ed requirements at the MTA receiving institutions as well. So that is another topic that we could cover. The other thing that I don't want to go there. The other thing I will also mention is one question that kind of has come up for me, if people are interested in talking about it, is the website launched in May of 2019, and honestly, it just feels like yesterday it was launched, but it's been almost 18 months or over 18 months. And we've had the same images and the same look and feel on the website. We wanted it to be that way for the first pretty significant period of time, because it's important that when people come here, they feel like this is what they're expecting to see. So we wanted it to be pretty consistent in the beginning. But I think people are pretty comfortable that this is where they need to be. We have redirected mytransfer.net, mytransfer.com, and mytransfer.org to this website. So I feel like this is pretty well established as the transfer website and the replacement for the MTN. So I'd really be interested, and we may do this at the end, in hearing some of your feedback about how we could update the website, update the homepage of the website, and modernize the look and feel of it as well. Okay, with that said, I'm going to go back to the Mentimeter, and we have a lot of different options. Best practice, gen ed for MTA, data cleanup. Sorry, I'm just reading through these reports, MTA courses. We've had 6 people participate. So I am seeing MyTransfer Pathways potentially as an option. And I think that would include the transfer pathways reports. Best practices, that's kind of interesting topic. Ooh, university to community college transfer credit. Okay, and I'm just seeing the reports. Okay. Okay, this actually, ooh, pathways marketing. Oh boy, that's a really good one too. New features. Okay. So this is helpful. Keep adding your things in here, but I know this is kind of informal for everybody who's on the call, but Katie and Donna, I think what we could do, Donna, perhaps I'll send you into a room with folks who want to talk about the MyTransfer pathways related topics. And it looks like we probably have some stuff related to the agreements, the reports, pathways marketing are some helpful. Somebody else said pathways marketing. That's good. So we could do some things in there. Katie, I think I will put you in a room that's related to reports because we've got a few things in there in reports. And then I will be in a room that is focused around best practices. And I can cover the gen ed, I can cover data cleanup around best practices for that. So I think that's kind of how we'll separate things out.
Hey, Erica, if
yes.
we find that there's only onesie twosies in some of our rooms, would it make sense just to all stay together since the group isn't that large? Or do you want to just kind of figure that out as we go?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I was just thinking about the timeline. It's 1:15 and we have until 2 o'clock. I was thinking if we went out into breakouts from now until about 1:40, we
Okay.
could come back together at the end and spend, 15 minutes or so talking bigger picture types of things. But I'd actually like to hear what folks think. And so I don't have a Mentimeter up for this, but if you could just note in the chat if you would rather stay as a full group or if you think it's important let me know. Are you having trouble deciding which room you would go into after we talked about those 3 rooms? Let me know in the chat if you'd rather stay full group so we could cover all of those things, or if you would prefer to go into breakout rooms and then come back together at the end. So I'll give you another second or so to participate in the chat, and in the chat if you would just say full group or breakouts.
Really good question in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
The breakouts cannot be recorded. So if we
they can be recorded.
Oh, they can. Oh,
yep.
that's
the host can record. The host can record the breakout sessions. Yep.
I did not realize that.
That helps your decision, Shiloh. The host has to press record, which I have missed doing.
For every breakout room? Sorry, I'm just making sure I know how to do it. Okay.
Yep. Press record. Oh, we've got 3 votes for stay together, full group. This is reminding me of the We're All in This Together song that
don't have to worry about recording the individual breakouts at this point.
Haunted me for 2020. Okay, full group. Great. Okay. Full group wins. Early voters get to stay in the full group. So we'll go ahead with that. So I still think your topics were really helpful. I feel like pathways marketing came out here really big in the middle. So Donna and Katie, I think you are more involved in that aspect of the work. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to you. But for those of you who added pathways marketing as one of your questions, I'm wondering, I can go ahead and monitor the chat and see if there are any specific questions about that. I will also stop sharing my screen so that if Donna or Katie needs to share their screen, they can do so. And I will go ahead and I think turn it over to Donna or Katie.
I vote for you, Katie.
I was going to say I'm ready. So I was going to give you a second, but I actually just got some input from a colleague today who is preparing some transfer guides for the MyTransfer pathways. And I think that's one of the ways that folks are choosing to market. I will share my screen so that I can, I think the biggest piece of the puzzle for a lot of folks is where we are housing the public facing materials on the website, which if you go up to the students drop-down menu and select transfer your associate degree, some of you will know that this is where we have these new accordion lists for each of the transfer pathways. We are pulling in all of the links that you all are inputting on your institutional profile page. So the one at the top, this covers most of the participating institutions, and this is all of the institutions that have provided a direct link for articulation agreements and transfer guides. And then beneath that, we have all 10 of the My Transfer pathways. And I'll just select business first because it has the most activity here. But you can see if you're looking here, this is not even close to all of the institutions that are participating in business. So I think for some of the campuses, this is a piece at which you're stuck in trying to develop some marketing or student-facing materials for your participation in the pathways. I was planning, the first thing that came to my mind when I saw My Transfer pathways was to walk through some of these examples, but I want to ask those of you who put this in as your preferred topic, if that is the right place to start, or if there are other questions you would like, or other ways you'd like to steer this conversation before I start clicking through a few examples.
So this is Amber Thomas. Would you prefer chatting or just submitting questions via voice?
Go for it. Let's talk. Yeah. If there's a specific question you want to ask, I think that that's helpful probably
Okay.
to everyone.
We only participated in the art studio pathway, but we have a really small group, and it was a lot of time investment for us, and we'd like to see more of the colleges that we're able to work with putting agreements up there. But like you just mentioned, it seems like there isn't a whole lot of guidance out there for just how to market those. So we're curious if there is going to be something that'll be released as guidance. So. Yeah.
So good question. We are not releasing any guidance from our space as kind of a centralized project team. I think the best guidance is to look at what your sister institutions have done in this case. And I think what you're referring to, Amber, are these pieces here? Is this kind of what you want to talk about? Or are you thinking about other marketing like that might be more traditional media type marketing?
So from our end, I'm curious, what the community colleges are going to be doing, to, convey this as an option for students.
Good. Okay, so
too, but.
Yeah, so I can speak to that a little bit. I have interfaced most with the community colleges who are some of them are very busy creating new protocols for their advising staff so that folks know how and where to advise students who are participating in these pathways or who are maybe taking the curriculum that fits the pathway but may not know that they're already doing the pathway, right? So helping to make students aware of those things through their advising protocols. I just saw a really cool draft of a transfer guide from Washtenaw Community College, and it actually looks a lot like what these websites look like. I'm going to show you Jackson's website because I really like the way that they have their stuff laid out. The transfer guide at Washtenaw that I just saw is only a draft, and I don't have their permission to share it, so I won't pull that up, but I am going to try to make this a little bigger so you guys can, here we go. So you can see, I really like that Jackson has created a single page for the My Transfer pathways. And then they have all of the ones that they're participating in delineated with these little plus markers so that you can pop out or pop in the information based on what you want to see. And since you're specifically looking at art, I can show you here what they've got for art. And this is very similar to what I saw on the advising guide from our colleagues at Washtenaw, where they're identifying what these agreements are, how they interface with the MTA, and they've got a listing of their courses, the curriculum that matches the My Transfer Pathway courses up at the top. They share the same information that we do on the web, the worksheets about the studio art recommendations for students. And then Jackson has these 3 additional courses that are required to get the associate degree at Jackson College. And they have listed out all of the currently participating for-year institutions with a link out. I think this links out to your worksheet. So you can see here at CCS, they've got your worksheet linked up. This is fine. And I think for a lot of reasons, this is easier when you're linking out to a colleague's page. The thing that makes me a little worried about it is that we will be updating those documents. And so that will be a challenge, I think, to keep up with as far as IT maintenance in terms of keeping all of these links up to date. In other cases, I've seen where these are not hyperlinked. They're simply offering the students the list of participating institutions, and then they're linking back, just like Jackson does here, to the equivalency tool so that students know they could find the course equivalency data for these participating 4 years at that location as well. So that's kind of, I really like what Jackson's done here. Delta has a really nice model as well, and I can show you Delta's. However, they are not, I don't know if they're not participating in art or they just don't have it. They don't have it up yet, but there isn't one specifically for art. So I'll show you another example for what they're doing at Delta.
Katie, while you're pulling that up, I was going to make a comment, but you had already brought the point up that, you know, this isn't a one-time only thing. This is a fluid development process, and people are changing courses as part of the fall 2020 joining update process. New institutions are adding a course. Some institutions are completely joining a new pathway. So don't think this is a one and done is my point. This is something that I think you need to kind of look at and keep track of. And it's a lot. So it's important to do that, especially if you're wanting to make sure students get the most current and accurate information.
Thank you, Donna. So Delta, I direct linked from the Delta link down here under biology, and this is the page it takes you to. I like this page for a couple of reasons. One, because it's introductory to the program. It talks a little bit about wage opportunities, earnings potentials in this career field, different kinds of careers that could be pursued. And then they go through step-by-step different tracks that they have in their program. So they have their transfer agreements. And in a moment, I want to show you that page as well, because there's something on there that I like quite a bit. And then they have this specific My Transfer Pathway option. Again, I know that my screen can be hard to read, so I'll try to make it a little larger here. Just like we saw at Jackson, they're listing the courses on their campus that fulfill the My Transfer Pathway course. And then they have, and this is an example where they have a list of the transfer destinations, but they haven't taken it upon themselves to provide the direct links. And I think that's okay. I know everybody wants to give students as much information as we can. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that people are linking out to those worksheets, but as I've shared, keeping those links up to date is difficult. But also, I'm not sure the worksheet shares what the four-year student needs to know about completing the degree at that four-year institution. The purpose of these worksheets was to showcase the lower division curriculum to be completed in the first 2 years and how it overlaps between the community college and the university or the four-year institution. So if a student is clicking that link and looking for the completion plan, so far, I have not seen that demonstrated in those. It's not demonstrated in the worksheets because that's not the way that we design them, but I have not yet seen a really good example at a four-year institution, and maybe I just haven't looked yet. There could be some out there, but I think it would be really useful to show a student, after you come in from the My Transfer Pathway, what else do you have to complete? And then Delta's page also gives some great advising information. They have a bunch of details around here, down here about case making, but they tell the student how you can get advising information. So this is a direct link from the My Transfer Pathway Biology list. The reason I wanted to show you this is because I actually had the chance to meet with the marketing department and their transfer liaison at Delta to talk through options for this. And I think it was useful to provide a bit of an outsider's perspective. Sometimes, you know, it's hard to, when you're in it at your institution, or we all know that we get a little jargony when we're asking for things from IT or data management professionals. And so it can be helpful to have somebody help you with that communication request. So we talked about where would it fit? Where would the My Transfer Pathways kind of fit? And they agreed, and they added this new little bucket over here to be able to actually explain all of the My Transfer Pathways at the macro level. And then it walks through and links through all of the specific ones that they're participating in. So you'll see when I click to biology, it's going to look just like what we were just looking at. So I really like that. I think that that's awesome because it helps their students who are maybe thinking of transferring but not sure where, looking at this from a marketing and more generic advising perspective, and then being able to show them all of those options. So those are a couple of examples that I really like. My colleagues are welcome to step in if there's something you would like to share, or folks, if you want to ask other questions about that or things that you're curious about, feel free. I'm not looking at the chat.
One thing I can mention about the fall joiners and modifying in terms of you individually at your institutions, keeping this information up to date. As we post new information related to joining and modification, there will be a cover letter with those agreements that summarize the changes. So that should be helpful for you to know without having to go into each agreement to say, okay, what's different? There'll be a summary there so that you can then go through and update your pages.
Katie, I had a question I put in the chat. When you're on that page where the pathways are, there's articulation agreements and transfer guides. How would somebody go in and update that? Because I know like at Eastern, we have somebody that was working with the pathways, pretty exclusively. We have somebody else that works with the general upload of the MTA and the institutional site or page, I should say. But I'm not even sure how to get into that page to, add our information. And I think, that's why these are so helpful, because the page is very nice and the site is very nice and complex, but you can almost get lost in how many places that you could, make modifications. So this is very helpful.
Yep. And maybe, I hope I'm probably going too fast because I'm answering your question before you're done asking it. Sorry. So I just logged in. I did log in as myself as a super user because I'll be able to see what I'm looking for as myself. You guys won't see all of this in the exact same capacity, but when you log in, Colleen, and you click on institutions, that's actually where it should take you to your institutional profile page. And I'm going to actually go there right now. It should look just like this, actually, and you will be able to see all of the different boxes. And the transfer guidance section is where the articulation agreements and transfer guides URL will be placed. And so you can add that there. You can add, we've added a number of boxes, but you can also add, as you guys have done down here, somebody has done anyway, boxes at your discretion. So you do have your articulation agreements here. So interesting.
Yeah, Katie, that's where, because I was talking to Carol
Right.
This past week, and there were so many different places you could put them that we were wondering, should we put them in every place, or would that be overwhelming if somebody goes in there trying to click on different areas? Or so
right.
that yeah.
So you need it on this box because this box is written into code to pull out into the transfer your associate degree page. This one up here
Okay.
is what actually pulls out when you go to this page.
Right. So Katie, I'll just add, Colleen, you if you're experiencing a problem with this, let us know. But if you update it where Katie showed, it should, on the rest of the site, we pick it up from everything that you put on the institutional profile page.
Okay, good to know.
Yep. And then the reason it's not picking them up down here, because I see that you have provided them, and I'll show everybody else what the confusion is. When you click on Eastern's page, you're going to see a box for articulation agreements here, right? So they've already added this link. However, it's added as a customized link and not in the box where the code is told to pull it from. It's the same thing with the My Transfer Pathways. Whoops, sorry. So the My Transfer Pathways down here, you have to click in edit and you have to have a link on every single box or you won't show up in these aggregated lists at the transfer your associate degree page.
That's very, very helpful.
Yep.
Thank
Good
you.
question. Really good question.
I think one thing we would like to do, I actually just recently asked our developers to do a dead link checker we have a dead link checker built into the site, and I noticed a dead link somewhere the other day. So I just asked him if he can send me a list of dead links, and then I can contact you and let you guys know if something's not working properly. But I also think I'm going to try to find somebody who can go through and identify those kind of issues that we have where, like, for example, Eastern has a fantastic institutional profile page, but there's probably some ways we could make sure that the information is in the right box, because we are picking that up for various places across the site.
While we're talking about Eastern, I thought I would showcase what they have done. Eastern has made new catalog pages as part of their web catalog to describe their participation in the pathways. So for those of you looking for examples, I also think this is really nice. And it shows the other end of what I was showing you at Delta and Jackson, where Eastern is describing this as a transfer in opportunity. They're explaining what those lower division common courses are that we call the My Transfer Pathway courses. They've got some specialized advising notes. So this is where our worksheets are not adequate to provide this much detail about what the students might need to know in terms of coming into this program at Eastern. And then they describe how students can get advising, how they're eligible, and then the rest of the courses, which again, if you're a transfer student, this is really what you're looking at. And it looks really nice, and it's all integrated with their catalog where you can click out and get more details about the coursework. So just thought I would showcase that as well as another opportunity. There are a few community colleges that have done this too. So on the other end of that equation, they've created new program pages or new catalog entries for their My Transfer Pathway degrees. And that's an option if your catalog is malleable like that. Let's see. One thing that I thought I would mention, because this question came up just yesterday, is some of you will know that if you click down under technical resources for faculty and staff and select My Transfer Pathways, there's this embedded page for My Transfer Pathways for faculty and staff. There is a lot of great information here. One of the things that people really like about this page is that not only can you access the full agreement and get everyone's worksheets and the other appendices that are embedded within, there's a macro level list, and not the organization macro, the higher level list of all of the participating institutions in all of the pathways. It's going to take a minute to load on my page here because it's my computer's got a lot going on here. But this is the same spreadsheet is linked for all of the agreements. And one of the things that is a little tricky is that a lot of the advisors, or in this case, when Washtenaw asked me about their advising guide, they asked, could we link out to the agreements? And this is not our position necessarily to tell you what to do as far as sharing the information and not sharing. We did not draft those agreements to be consumable by students. We drafted them, and you all know that they're highly technical. The language included is highly technical and pretty complicated. So it's your call. I'm not going to tell you yes or no. I will say this person wanted to actually provide the direct link to the full agreement. And when I tried to navigate to it, I could not. It was a dead link for some reason, or it wasn't easily shared because we have hot linking turned off on our website. So I said, if you feel like this is something that students need to be aware of, provide this link at the top, because it'll take you to the landing page wherein hopefully all of the information will be current. Again, it is not our intention that students are receiving this information here, because there is quite tedious and technical detail, but people are doing it. So I'm not going to say that I'm the police and I'm going to shut them down, but I just think that is a little tricky. When you'll start to see the complexity when I pull up the filterable exception spreadsheet. You would think you would want students to know about exceptions, and absolutely we do, but we provide this for advisors to be able to tell students about these exceptions if they indicate their interest in participating. So for instance, David might be he might be working with a student at Oakland and realize that there are a few minor exceptions in the art program to the 2D design course equivalency. And I just don't know that it's the best practice to send this out to students and tell them good luck, right? But our intention is that this is helpful to the advisors, who can then, in a setting where they're talking with the student, perhaps explain what these exceptions are. So I thought I would mention that because a couple people have asked me, could we link to the full agreement? People are doing it. I don't think the full agreement is what we want students to be seeing. We would rather the students see something like this that is so much more palatable and helpful to them understanding how to actually do the agreement. The only other thing I'll share about marketing is that if you navigate to that faculty and staff technical resources page, we also have some logos, screensavers, and marketing materials that point to this website. And these items can be customized by you all. So if you wanted to add additional detail on some of the materials down here, you can. There's space for co-branding in a lot of cases. So some campuses are doing some things with that and turning them into physical marketing documents, or also turning them into social media pages as well. So we had provided some social media links as part of the National Transfer Student Week in October about the My Transfer Pathways. And I guess we don't have those showing up here, but it might be useful to provide that link to people as well, because those were also editable graphics that you could use if you wanted to do some digital marketing around the transfer pathways. What did I miss, or what other questions do you all want to ask about My Transfer Pathways marketing?
I have a question. In our last video, you'd mentioned that there was a way to pull transfer guides. Is that if there's a transfer guide created? Or is it pulling from the information that's already in there?
Do you mean on this page where we've got them linked?
Maybe. That might have been what you're referring to.
We have, if the institution has provided a link to articulation agreements and transfer guides, those are being pulled from your institutional profile page and aggregated together on this site. So is that
Okay.
Trefny?
Yeah, it's Trefny, sorry.
Hey Trefny, let's see what you guys have here. Is this what you mean? You mean a link, or you mean the actual transfer guides for the disciplines?
An actual transfer guides.
Okay, so
I wasn't
yeah,
sure if there was a way that it was already that was created.
we don't currently have a database for the transfer guides. Now, I suppose if we wanted to expand the use of the doc repository, we could think about people being able to share those documents there, but that's not necessarily the intention for us to aggregate everybody else's transfer guides. However, it looks like you've got a lot of them here, or you're alluding to them anyway.
Well, those are the articulation agreements. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Stephanie,
tricky.
do you have a separate page for your transfer guides?
We do. Yeah.
Hmm.
So maybe
Okay,
that's
so
where it
we
needs
may
to go
need to
to.
we may need to think about creating
Two of
articulation
these.
agreements and transfer guides as two.
Right.
Okay. All right.
We could do,
Thank you.
yeah, and we could do some analysis, because I bet you're not the only ones that do that, but I do know a lot of folks have them linked together as well.
Which is fine. You can always put
Right.
in two
Yep.
links, but
Yep.
we can't put in two links in one place. So let me
Yep.
look. Yep, that's easy to fix. We just
Mhm.
need to figure out how to do the training and fix that for people. Thanks.
All right. Thanks.
And then I'll stop sharing, because I think Erica or Donna may want to share their screens to talk some more about the reports or the data cleanup. I don't know how much we're going to be able to do with data cleanup in a larger group. So it could be that you want to follow up afterwards, unless Erica, you've got something in mind that you can show folks. But I know that a lot of people are struggling to get in their IT people's queue to get these pages done. So I will also say that some of your colleagues have been able to make some provisions. Actually, Central's has a new page up, but for a while, what Central had up was this, and then they were able to get this link more quickly and easily before they had the new page developed. And so for a while, this was what came up when you would click on Central's name here, just the link, the PDF thing. Again, not perfect. I like what they've done here better, because it's more descriptive. But if you're in the queue for IT and you want something to show up so that you don't get missed on the list, that's an option as well.
Yeah.
All right. I said I was going to stop sharing. I will do that.
I'll just reinforce something that I think we've learned from talking with community colleges is the web pages that you're creating are great. It's great to have that reference, but I also think that training your advisors on how these agreements work, especially if they weren't involved in the process, training your admissions folks as well at both community colleges and universities, so people know how these work and how you have them fit into the rest of your work. And then your faculty as well. For those of you who have faculty that perhaps do some advising with students, I particularly think it's critical at the community colleges that faculty understand those common courses that were chosen that we call the My Transfer Pathways courses, how those were selected and why it's so important that students know that they can take those courses and they'll transfer to any participating institution. So just keep that in mind as well. Data cleanup. I'm wondering, are we interested in course equivalency data or other parts? If anybody could jump in. Or if nobody said that, the person who said it maybe left. Course equivalency data cleanup, Jill says. All right, good question. So this is a pretty complicated question, I will say, because the data that are in the MTN come from your database at your institution. So I'll go up to our dashboard here, and if I go to course data, and just the same as Katie, I have super user access in here, so I'm seeing a lot of institutions. But when you're uploading course data, that then, as you all know, will eventually appear on the Transfer Your Courses webpage. That comes from the database at your institution. So I think it's important to remember that if data cleanup is going to happen, it probably needs to happen in your transfer database. Now, in my experience, transfer databases either are housed within the student information system, in a system like typically in Michigan, Banner, Colleague, PeopleSoft. And then in a system like Genzabar, it works a little bit differently. And I know that some of you manage your equivalencies in more of like an Excel or a separate kind of database like that. Any of those options are fine, but when it comes to data cleanup, the cleanup needs to happen in your own database. There's not a lot of great resources out there nationally on how to do that. Not even really how to do data cleanup, but really principles around what data you should have in your student information system as it relates to data or as it relates to course equivalencies. I do know that there are a couple of funders that philanthropies that we work with nationally who have funded some really terrific work that's going to be coming out over the next year or two around transfer equivalencies, particularly around the kind of business process associated with providing colleges with guidance about how you can make sure that you're equitably awarding credit to students. And then I think also some guidance around how these student information systems can be more responsive to our transfer credit needs right now. So I'm really looking forward to hearing some of those things that are going to be coming out over the next year or so, because I think that we've desperately needed that guidance more nationally. It's you know, in Michigan, we've got 4 student information systems just within the community colleges. I think we will have 5 in the state pretty soon. And so we really need a national organization to provide some advice on this and really kind of get feedback, not just from Michigan, but from folks all over the place as well. A couple of things that I think are just really kind of good guidance. In the reports section, which we covered this last time, but one report that we included within the database is what we call a duplicate equivalency report. And so if you go out here, you will be able to, let me go to a receiving institution. Oops.
Erica, the
Yeah.
examples that we had written down the last time that we thought would be good for this report to show information were ELMA, OU, and EMU, just to let you know.
Yeah, I was just trying to pull up OU, but I ended up pulling up OCC, my natural inclination to go to OCC. But OCC has one here as well. So David, I know you're on the call. Sorry to kind of call you out on this, but so OCC is the receiving institution, and we see here in this report, and I have to scroll way down to the bottom, that we have 431 duplicates. And there may be a good reason for some of these to be duplicates, but essentially what this means is that we see if a student took FAS 350 at Adrian College and it transfers as AAS elective credit at OCC, it would appear to our duplicate checker that this is in the database 2 times. And so one really good feature of the MTN is that we have this duplicate equivalency. I'm not saying that there aren't legitimate reasons for duplicates, but a lot of times they're in there twice and they shouldn't be. So David, this might be like a great way for OCC just to, you know, over holiday break or something when students aren't, well, I guess students aren't really around that much right now anyway, but in terms of having a little bit of break between the terms, this is a terrific report to kind of investigate why you might have 2 in here. It's pretty common when you have elective credit that you would have dupes. because you may award, I don't even know, but this happens a lot in art actually, because of the way that we award credit for performance courses in the arts, that it often use the same course number. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's a great thing to check on. So I would check on duplicate equivalencies in our system and then look back in your system. The other really terrific practice that is a great way to clean up your equivalencies is to add effective dates. So when did this equivalency begin? And when does this equivalency end? It's good to add those in your own database. We can pick those up in the query that you create, and you can supply those to the MTN. Neither of those fields are required. And you can include the begin date, but no end date. And you can include the end date, but no begin date. So if it's like since the beginning of time, it's okay. You don't have to have a begin date in there, but I think that's a really good practice as well, is to identify those, adding effective dates where you think it's appropriate. The third thing I'll say before we move on to see if we have any other best practices is we did a session a month or so ago at the Macro conference, which was great. Congratulations to Macro for doing that. I presented with Carrie Jeffers from Macomb Community College and Carrie Burse from St. Clair County Community College. And, two very different institutions in terms of size. But we kind of talked a lot about, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time kind of thing. And I think there are strategies you can use to effectively clean up your equivalencies. Carrie and Carrie talked about focusing on, especially at community colleges, those equivalencies in the MyTransfer Pathways courses, and make sure those are all cleaned up and look really good. No duplicates, they include effective dates and some of those other practices. The other set of courses are your MTA courses. And I know this sounds kind of weird because the MTA courses really should come over as a block if the student has the MTA stamp. However, we also know that MTA courses are the most subscribed courses in all of our systems. So if the student doesn't have the MTA stamp, it's good to have those as direct equivalencies. I think that's another really good practice. The third thing that Carrie and Carrie also mentioned, and I couldn't agree more, is work with your willing faculty. So don't worry about, Carrie has something like, 200,000 equivalencies. Well, Carrie Jeffers has 200,000 equivalencies in the MTN. It's impossible for her to think, I'm gonna clean up all of these. But think about if you have faculty who are really supportive of transfer students, really want to be engaged in this process, pull your equivalencies, and you can do that with either the equivalencies by transferring institution or receiving institution. You can download that report as an Excel document or Excel file. You can put it in a BI tool, or you can just manipulate it in Excel. The other thing you can do, you can drill down into this report even more. But, if your psych faculty love this, they want more transfer students, they're really into it, hey, take advantage of that and get them to help you clean up those equivalencies as well. So those would be kind of the cleanup recommendations I would make. I wish I could tell you that there was like a program you could buy or we could all buy together that just cleaned everything up. To my knowledge, that does not exist. But I think those are just some good practices to use if you're trying to clean up your data. So let's go back and see. Oh, I lost my Mentimeter. So we've got a couple more minutes left. Some folks asked about best practices, and so I'm wondering if you could include some more details in the chat about what kind of best practices you'd like to discuss.
Erica, as we're waiting for people to maybe share what they're thinking, I can show them something really quick if I can share my screen. And it's related to the transfer equivalency reports or the course equivalency matrices. One thing that I did as people wanted to either add a course or join a complete pathway, I created some tools for them to be able to evaluate just that portion instead of having to go out and kind of add to or build their own matrices. So as an example, for those institutions that wanted to say join psychology in fall 2020, there were 2 institutions, one is Ferris and one was Andrews. So I built them just a small equivalency matrix for them to look at. And the reason I'm showing you this is that each institution, if you're wanting to look at how a course might be equivalent or a series of courses might be equivalent, this is something you can build yourself. This isn't something that we have to do for you. So as an example, you could even duplicate this matrix and then just put in your own information. So what this shows for joining the psychology pathway is it lists those institutions' courses, it lists the participating community colleges, excuse me, and it lists potentially some holes. The hard part with psychology, though, is there are some community colleges that don't offer a specific course, and that may be an explanation for that hole. So that's where you kind of have to cross-check and see in the exceptions if that was a course that the community college actually did not offer. Let me show you a community college example. So let's say on the community college side, Kellogg Community College wanted to introduce a new course as part of their pathway, and this is interpersonal communications. So I built this for them, which includes all of those four-year institutions that are participating. And then they could just go in and view that matrix and see which four-year institutions they do not have an equivalency with. And the important thing for them would be to then reach out to these institutions and say, we've added this course. Here's the syllabi that's been uploaded to the doc repository. Can you please go out and evaluate the course so that we can participate appropriately? The other thing that I think this example really shows specifically is the fact that many of these currently have just general credit equivalency. So like you will see like the X's or the cred or the 000. That is something too that I would really strongly suggest that if you are a community college, work with that four-year institution to try to make sure it's a direct equivalent, which is most useful for students. So I just wanted to show that really quick, just as to see if that would be helpful for people.
David asked if the institution's transfer equivalency systems automatically communicate with MTN, and they do not. The institution needs to extract the data from their data system and then report it to the MTN. We explored that possibility, but there's too many data systems in Michigan, and most of them have been customized. And so it's really hard to extract the data and then put it in there. So Donna, I will just reinforce Colleen said the reports in the background of the MTN are just really valuable in this process. And I'll just make a plug for Donna. Fortunately, Donna and Katie have been able to continue supporting a lot of this work that we're doing. And they are sincere, and so am I, when we say that we are happy to get on the phone with you for 30 minutes or an hour and just kind of listen to what your needs are and see how we can help out with that. So please don't hesitate to reach out to one of us because we have learned through this talking to a lot of people how people are kind of hacking the system to be able to use it. And whether if it's just you or if it's you and a few people from your campus, I think that's even better. If there's a few people, and Zoom makes it so easy for us to do that. So feel free to do that. The other recommendation I'll make is, I know it can be hard to get multiple people together, but remember those individual sessions can be recorded too, and we can always send you, or you can even record it yourself on Zoom. If you wanted to share that with some other folks on your campus. So I really took some takeaways away from this as well. We've been ruminating on the idea of doing some additional training around the marketing piece. And I think particularly the training around advisors and counselors. So at community colleges specifically. So even if we've had some success putting together PowerPoint decks that you can customize to meet your needs, we've had a lot of people reuse those. And so that may be something we can look forward to doing in 2021. So thank you all for joining us. I'll give you 1 minute of your day back. And we made the mistake again this week. We should have scheduled this from 1 to 5 and then ended at 2 o'clock, but maybe next time. So
Next time. Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Here,
Talk with you
everybody.
soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys.
Holidays, everybody.